I think we're live, everyone. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We would like to thank you all first for joining us today. My name is Badr, and I'll be the moderator of the discussion. Just as a general introduction, I want to tell you that in this webinar, we will have a couple of guests, and we will go through them speaking about our subject of the day. We will also have a little Q&A session at the end because we believe that in this webinar, one of the most important things is the interaction with you guys. We want to hear from your opinions. We want to get questions from you, and we are ready to answer them at any point. So the subject we have chosen for today is that of positive discrimination in the hiring process. Just to give you some background information, the general definition of positive discrimination, according to Cambridge Dictionary, is the act of giving advantage to those groups in society that are often treated unfairly because of their race, sex, etc. But then, in the specific context we have here, which is the allocation of resource or employment, it's the practice or policy of favoring individuals belonging to groups known to have been discriminated against previously. So, in order to make this discussion as fruitful as possible, we have a couple of guests with us today. First, we have Nisrine, who is a victim of positive discrimination herself. We also have Iman, who is a social activist and a spokesperson for a pro-LGBTQ plus group and an advocate for positive discrimination practices in this situation. Finally, we have Rhita, who is she is an HR person of a multinational company, and also she's part of a couple of HR networks as an HR specialist. She's also going to give us the perspective from the hiring process herself. Okay, I guess that's a good introduction. Now we will start by hearing from our victim, who's going to give us her story so that we can base our discussion on. Nisrine, here you go.
First of all, I would like to thank you all for welcoming me in this platform. I believe this issue is one to be raised and voiced. And for my experience, last fall, I was applying for the public relations department in this company abroad, a position that I have always strived for and worked hard to get. My roommate, however, who is also a member of the LGBTQ plus community, was also interested in the same position, but not quite the same level of motivation. I knew I had the qualifications to earn this position, so I sent my application and so did my roommate. However, once I received a response from the company, I was quite shocked, if I'm being honest, to know that my roommate took hold of the position instead of me. I strongly believe that this was a form of positive discrimination, as the employer favored my roommate because of her sexual orientation and in order to promote this idea of them being an open-minded company.
Okay, thank you very much, Nisrine. This was a very interesting testimony, as we can hear a solid real life experience that one person that's here had today. Now I would like to get the word from Iman, our activist, and we want to hear about her opinion on this situation and what she thinks of the subject as a whole. There you go, Iman.
Thank you, Badr. As mentioned earlier, positive discrimination has to do with favoring minorities. In her case, Nisrine mentioned that she did not get the job because her friend, who is a minority due to her sexual orientation, was hired instead. Members of the LGBTQ community are seldom taken into consideration for important positions in the workplace because homophobia is extremely prominent in all fields. The minorities of this group are often overlooked because of their sexuality, since the job most often requires them to compromise their identity and to keep it confidential in order to be taken seriously. And it is not limited to just certain places or countries, because even the most open-minded environments in the world try to avoid LGBTQ communities because it is kind of controversial. The LGBTQ plus members cannot obtain positions as easily as majorities like Nisrine, and therefore Nisrine saying or blaming minorities for not obtaining the job is kind of a form of self-absorption, since she can easily get other jobs, unlike the community that suffers from discrimination and segregation. Recently, even the most prominent jobs for communities as such are just very low and with really really horrible conditions and bad pay. So yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Iman, for your great insights. Just as a reminder for everybody watching us live, feel free to keep your comments going and any just comments or questions or anything specific, we'll be checking them at the end at our Q&A session. Okay, so now we will go and hear from Rita, who is the HR specialist.
Thank you, Badr. Positive discrimination is proclaimed to be a way to redress the unequal situations of groups seen as structurally disadvantaged by granting them a privileged status. However, I believe that the process of hiring should be by merit, not according to the race or the gender or even the sexual orientation. This positive discrimination reverses the hierarchy of privileges instead of eliminating it, creating a feeling of constraint and injustice among those who are excluded from the procedure. Second, it legitimates the demand linked to ethnicity, religion, and identity. A just policy of equality should not consist in creating positive discrimination, but in correcting situations of negative discriminations. As a person working in HR, I believe that it is not ethical to practice positive discrimination. Personally, I assisted too many cases of positive discrimination, and I believe that many applicants with more merits would have been more appropriate for the job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rita, for your insights. This is like I know that it has such a big weight because it comes exactly from you being an HR specialist. You've been through the process many times, so you must have seen and interacted with many applicants. So I know that your insights must have such a big weight. Okay, so now before we get a round of interaction between everybody else, I would like to ask a couple of extra questions to our victim here, Nisrine. Uh, just like to make sure that this is an actual situation of positive discrimination, why exactly do you think that in the case of your roommate that she was only taken in that position of the company because of her sexual orientation?
Thank you, Badr. First of all, in regards to my roommate, I have known her for quite a while now, and I have managed to observe her study routine, which was not very fruitful, if I might say, compared to mine, in which I really focused on earning this job and wanting it so bad to upgrade in order to upgrade my career in the whole level. Moreover, um, to my roommate, her sexual orientation was something that I believe she was picked for in order to favor this company and make them seem as an open minded company as they have previously witnessed several complaints regarding them seen as conservative. Therefore, I believe that this was the main reason in which she was picked rather than me.
Okay, I see that this is like a very personal situation, so like you've been touched by it directly, and this does make a lot of sense. Okay, so now I just want to come back to our like the main topic. Let's get some interaction between our HR specialists and our activists here. Like the situation in hand, a lot of the times is about somehow finding a balance between having enough inclusion of everybody, and at the same time just making sure that the process is still as fair as possible and is merit based. So I would like to get some extra words from Iman here. Like, what do you think is like? Is there a way to get this balance, or is this kind of positive discrimination just a positive thing, and we should always like keep it up because it at the end of the day it always keeps us moving forward.
Thank you, Badr. Thank you, Badr. Well, I personally think that majorities and people with less or more acceptable social standards are more prone to get jobs with higher pay and better conditions, and like other minorities such as the LGBTQ plus community. Therefore, it is truly important uh, recruit such minorities and give them the rights to have a better careers um, than just such horrible conditions. For instance, jobs in subway stations or really horrible conditions, as you may know. Um, so there should be a balance between both the majorities and community and the minorities, but it is important to value the minorities uh, and stop seeing their identity as a hindrance for their job, for the hiring process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Iman. I've noticed that we started to have some comments, and we have a question from Osama. I just want to tell you that we will be addressing at the end of the session. Thank you very much, and if you have anything else, just keep posting the question. Okay, so as we've heard from Iman right now, I would like to give the word to Nisrine, and I would like to hear from you as a victim. Like, do you still see that at the grand scheme of things, that positive discrimination could actually have a positive impact, even though in your specific situation you were a victim of some sort? But like, do you still see the use of such positive discrimination, and maybe like just if it wasn't in your situation, we could find some kind of balance, like from a victim's standpoint?
Thank you. Badr, first of all, I would like to address something that the Iman, the social activist, had mentioned earlier, which is about being or having self-absorption. In the workforce, in the job field, the competition is very high, both for the minorities and the other people who may be considered privileged. Therefore, as Rita mentioned, our HR, the person from the HR department, this picking the person for the position should be by merit and should be focused on the person's qualifications rather than their sexual orientation or social status. Therefore, from my perspective, this was a very unfair situation to be put in, and I would very much like to see something being done about it rather than just promoting this idea of minorities given a chance or anything similar. Because on the other hand, I do agree with this. The minorities should be given a chance, but then again, the game should be fair for both parties. So yeah, this is what I have to say about it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Now I would like to give the word to Rita. As her being like an HR specialist and having first-hand experience, I would like to know whether the subject we have in hand here is like some sort of debate or discussion kind of problem, and whether within her and her community she's had like some similar experiences and like the, just to know whether this is an actual prevalent subject in the actual work field. Thank you, Rita, please.
Um, yes, we had the discussion in our groups, and like everyone has an opinion about it. However, everyone argued that like it is not fair, but someone argues to show that minority groups that they can be part of the the companies. But in brief, everyone believes that hiring should be fair and not like based in gender or sexuality or race. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Rita. Now, I have a question for Iman, like whether you have very specifically some words to say to Nisrine in this situation, being a victim herself. Like, I know that you, as as an activist in the field, and just as a way of empowering LGBTQ plus groups, it's very important to give as much inclusion as possible. But now that you see a victim in front of you, like, how can you tell her about this, and how could you make it like I don't know, in a way, give her the in the grand scheme of things how this is really important and how it should be respected.
Thank you, Badr. Well, it is just important to realize that in these kind of situations where you are the person who is more prone to get a better job, you need to be the bigger person because in such professional situations, as I said, there is a lot of discrimination segregation. So therefore, sometimes these kind of cases do happen unfairly. But it is important to like just keep having a less strong perspective on the community and more allowed person to have a spotlight since they rarely do get these kind of chances and the fact that this happened is mere luck because most members of the community are very neglected. So, however, you Nisrine are more prone to having a better job since you are like a member of a majority, since you are more socially acceptable and less judged by society and the workplace. Thank you.
I would like to comment quickly on what Iman mentioned just now, and that is about how I should let the position go to my roommate because of her social situation, kind of. And in regards of that, we must keep in mind that choosing a certain employee should be based on their qualifications in order for them to be better at their jobs and help the company improve and advance in the future. And in this case, who's more qualified? Is it me, who actually worked hard for this position, or is it my roommate who was chosen just for her sexual orientation? Again, I would like to emphasize that this situation remains unfair, and the company should have kept in mind that it's for its own benefit. It should have chosen the person with the more qualifications in order for them to be part of this company's advancement, rather than just have the title with both of them being open-minded. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nisrine. I know that it's very important to get this kind of direct discussion between you and a person like of the other opinion because you get to see like exactly their point of view. And I don't know if it's gonna help you in any way, but still, I'm pretty sure that this kind of positive discussion is helpful, and getting this opinion is good for you. Again, I see another question from Badr. I just like to remind you that the Q&A session is at the end, but again, thank you for posting your questions, and we'll be answering all of them at the end. Now I'll give the word to Rita to see if she has any kind of words that she can help our victim Nisreen here with. Go on, Rita.
What will I will advise you is that you don't give up. There is a lot of companies these days that like have quotas about like the number of staff based on race or based on gender or based on sexuality. However, there is still a lot of companies who are still working on merit. So my advice is to not give up, to search, and to not like go thinking that you will not get hired because you're not like different sexually or your race is not like in some sort of quota or something. Just don't give up and go on the market and get this advice.
Thanks a lot, Rita. I think you might have some technical difficulties with your mic, but I hope that the message still came across very well. If any of you commenting, if you didn't hear something or you want to like rehear any of whatever our guests have to say, just feel free to let us know in the comments. Okay, now like I would like to give my opinion as a person as part of this discussion. As a moderator, I've been able to hear the different sides. I've heard it from the victim herself, from an activist that is an advocate for positive discrimination, and as well as an HR specialist who, in this case, does not support such practices. And it feels like in this situation, there is such a thin line between what we could consider like positive discrimination and just blatant, straight up discrimination. Because as much as we think of it as a positive thing and we can think of the overall good that it brings, still, from an HR perspective, as we have heard, a lot of situations, it sounds unethical and it seems like a situation that would bring more bad to the, for example, the company image for like being unfair in the process, and would probably discourage more applicants to apply the next time. But at the same time, it also brings a much needed diversity when it comes to the work, just the actual people working there, and when it comes to them being encouraged to apply as well, because in a lot of situations we know that minorities, just when they think of the fact that they are underrepresented in companies and in the workplace in general, they are often not ready to make that extra step and actually go and try their luck as well. So this positive discrimination in both situations could be very helpful and could bring some good in the grand scheme of things. Now I would like to hear from Nisrine if she has any final extra words, whether this specific situation that she has lived of positive discrimination, whether she's, I don't know, she's willing to overcome it and apply another time, or is she with this issue, or like, do you have any extra words in this situation?
Thank you, Badr. To answer your question, I definitely am more motivated to pursue other options as well because I believe that this company might have had the issue of the minority quota. However, it's still it's still an issue that needs to continue being raised and voiced and talked about, just like we're doing so right now. And I believe that we should just focus on what's coming next rather than just stay in the present situation and waste some time on it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Nisrin. I would also like to hear from Iman if she has any parting words, whether she just has any extra things to add in this situation when it comes to what Nisrin said, what Rita said, what the discussion as a whole brought us to.
Mhm. Thank you, Badr. Well, I wanted to add that if we want a balance between both, in the hiring process between both community, the minorities and the majorities, we need to have more places that can welcome the minorities, whether it's the LGBTQ community or other communities. So the people with good qualifications that are majorities can have jobs, and the other minorities as well. So if we really want to stop this unfair treatment, we need to have more places, more employers that welcome all kind of people based on their merit and based on their knowledge and experience instead of their being socially acceptable, because the main reason this happened is because minorities are treated unfairly, and so this is why we should have more places that welcome all kinds of people, and instead of focusing on their cons, social cons, we should instead focus on their good traits and their how they can contribute better to the association or the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iman. Now I would like to give the word to Rita, but just before that, I want to remind everybody that after we finish these parting words, we will move to our Q&A session, and we will be answering all of your questions. And again, if you have any comments, if they want to come after that, you're still welcome to just ask us. At the end of the day, this discussion, as much as we have our guests and there is this whole discussion we're creating, we still want it to be as interactive as possible, and we believe that your input and your feedback is very important to make this discussion the very best. Okay, Rita.
Yes, I would like to add that positive discrimination is is not a way to give opportunity to the minorities. It's only like make a gap between the minorities and other group of people. Like to be like fair, it should be like companies should give opportunity to everyone based on merit, not on like race or gender or sexual orientation. As an HR person, I believe that merit should be the first qualification to like to employ someone, not the race, not their gender, not anything else, just merits. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. I feel like at the end of the day, we have, even though we haven't reached like a compromise in this situation or we have reached like a middle ground, still, I believe that this interaction is very important because different people can hear different opinions. And at the end of the day, we can all get something out of it, no matter what the actual opinion is. Now we will be heading to our Q&A session. We can start by the very first question by Tlaghi Usama. He's asking Nisrine, whether she thinks that perhaps the company she applied to had a minority quota. I'll let Nisrine answer the question.
Thank you for your question. And to answer that, I believe so. Yes, the company may have had an issue with minority, as in employing multiple people from different races, sexual orientations, and whatnot. However, I don't think it still justifies this act of them choosing someone who is more qualified rather than another who happens to be part of the minority. Therefore, there should be more fairness and equality between who's to have this position. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nisreen. I would also like to add, like, the fact that uh, as much as this company could indeed have had a minority quota, we should know that this minority quota practice, like, it should not overlap. Because in a lot of situations, this minority quota is so blatant and so straightforward that it completely excludes so many good applicants, so many people that actually deserve to get the job, and I feel like positive discrimination in a way should be excluded from having this minority quota because in a way it still promotes a better way of including minorities rather than just having a strict fixed quota that you just have to include this number of people from different races, different sexual orientations, and different genders, and so on and so forth, in a way that just you want to get that quota actually covered and you don't care about the applicants and so on and so forth. Next, we can move to Badr's question. He's asking about positive discrimination, how similar it is to equity, and whether like equity should be promoted instead, uh, since it does not like create these opposite categories. Would Iman have like an answer to that, maybe?
Yes, thank you, Badr. Well, it is different because positive discrimination, at the same time, it kind of puts the majorities in an unfair situation, and it favors the minorities, which is still the same problem as it's a continuous circle, so it's still the same problem. So equity instead is to have the same treatment for both, for all kind of communities, whether they are socially acceptable or not, and therefore equity should be promoted instead because it creates more understanding and less hate between different communities, and it also creates a healthy competition based on merit and knowledge and experience and everything that a work should focus on instead of any other traits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iman, for answering to the question. For now, I believe that we have no more questions, but we can take just a couple of seconds to see if any of you guys have any extra questions in the matter and whether there is anything you would like to add.
I would like to say something quickly, and that is, first of all, I would like to thank you all for raising this issue and allowing me to speak up for my position. I would like to thank Iman for bringing more awareness about the minorities and shedding a light over the issues they might face, especially in the workforce. And I would also like to thank Rita for her output, for her input regarding this issue, and finally for Badr for managing this platform and allowing everyone to share their perspectives on it and their opinions regarding this matter. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Nisrine. It has indeed been a pleasure to get you all today in this discussion and just hear from all of us. And I know that maybe you hadn't had like a platform previously to speak up and share your opinion with somebody else. And I feel like we should create as many of these platforms as possible so that we can always have the discussion ongoing. On the subject of more questions, I believe we do have an extra one. A question from Abdul Jalil. He's asking us, what do you think is a better solution for the issue? I believe by that he means like the issue of inclusion of as many people as possible in the hiring process. And for that, let's have Rita answer us, being the HR specialist.
In my opinion, a better solution is to have a blind hiring process. Like when you're hiring someone, you don't see like his person, you see his qualification, not his race or his gender or his sexual orientation, just what he did in his life, just his academics, his like experience, not who he like who is the person, just his this like could make things much better. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita, and thank you everybody for just giving us this wonderful opportunity to share with you. I would like to thank all of our viewers, everybody who's interacted with us, everybody who's been commenting. I would very much importantly want to thank our guests today because could like this whole discussion couldn't have been possible without like any of them. For that, like I would just like to give maybe Iman if she wants to say something at the very end of this discussion, maybe then Rita or something. So I guess yeah, we'll just give it to Iman.
Mhm. Well, I think to conclude, I must say that there shouldn't be in the workplace no hate between any communities, and also it is true that it shouldn't be unfair. It shouldn't be unfair like anything was treated. Like for instance, everyone should have a chance to have a good job based on their knowledge and qualities instead of their sexuality or race or appearance, as I mentioned. So that is why we should work on excluding the social traits outside of the workplace if they are based on identity, and instead focus on seeing what the person can do in the workplace, what they can contribute by for a better environment and a more accepting environment. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just finally now with this last extra like parting words and statement from Iman, I guess we have indeed reached the end of this webinar, of this wonderful discussion that we've been having. I feel like Rita might have had some issues, but I would like to thank her very much for being with us till the very end. Yes, here she is, I guess, just for some parting words. And just overall, I would like to thank everybody for showing up, for commenting, and so on and so forth, as I've said before. And I would like to thank our guests, and I'll think that would be it. Thank you very much, guys.